Welcome to Tearsheet's LinkedIn Live. I'm Tearsheet Editor-in-Chief Zach Miller. This is where we take you behind the curtain, how the sausage is made in terms of our podcast. We've been doing this for over a decade, mostly recorded, but we are starting to do more and more of these live sessions. I'm here today joined by Olly Downs, Chief Technology and AI Officer at Curinos. And we're going to be talking about AI-driven personalization in banking. We've been talking a lot about AI recently, not so much in terms of personalization. So I'm excited to talk to you today, Olly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zach. Pleasure to be here.
So how do you come at AI-driven personalization in banking, given your background? Like, how'd you get here?
Oh, golly. I've had a wonderful career. I think timing is always the great thing with careers. Just a wonderful career time to three of what I consider to be the four waves of AI. I began my career in the Applied Statistics and Machine Learning group at Microsoft Research. Got to spin out their first IP Ventures company. I've done 9 startups, all data science, machine learning, and AI based. Actually published my first academic paper on what we now would call generative AI in 1999, generating images actually of human faces, synthesizing natural language topics from encyclopedia articles. And so I've almost been waiting for the current wave of AI to join us.
And I guess where we are today, you said you've been thinking about this stuff, working on this stuff years ago. Is there anything surprising about where we are? Did we hit it sooner than you thought we would? Like, is the technology mature enough at this point? I guess I'm kind of curious if you were to think of the own timeline of what you were thinking about the future would look like. Where do we stand today?
I think we've done so much better in understanding language and the human internalization of concepts and being able to recognize them across the modes in which we communicate, both visual, verbal, and written. I think we've done a better job than I expected in those ways. I think I thought of it more as perhaps more siloed use cases rather than we have a comprehensive understanding that puts all those things together and we can pull use cases from it.
And you got here to Curinos specifically through founding your own company as well, right? Can we talk about what that was all about?
That's right. I've done 9
9.
early stage startups, the last of which was Amplero. Curinos' predecessor company was our banking industry go-to-market partner. And Curinos acquired the company in 2020, just before it became Curinos, actually. And the technology behind that company and its product, Amplero, is very much focused on personalizing the digital experience for retail banking customers, but across all the digital channels of engagement that a bank might have with them. And if you think about the journey banking has been on, traditional banking is a little bit the equivalent of the mom and pop corner shop where, traditional banking was really founded on personalized, high engagement relationships that followed families and businesses throughout their entire life cycle. And of course, as digital has expanded and exploded, how you carry that personalization and depth of engagement through digital channels requires a new wave of technology. And Amplero is very focused on that, synthesizing and observing the customer journey and deciding the right time, channel, and experience with which to interact with the customer.
I really liked what you said, Olly. You said like historically banking was personalized relationships. And when we moved online, it kind of became standardized products, right? So like in a way, we lost those relationships. And so maybe you can explain how AI-driven personalization in banking can help to redefine, reimagine those types of relationships, those types of personalized products in these digital channels.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'll share a few quick stats with you first that, JD Power identified recently that while 70% of millennials are open to financial services, acquired digitally, and that 3/4 almost of account openings in 2025 we expect to be digital, actually the most satisfied retail banking customers engage with both branch and digital services, and the least satisfied have a digital only relationship rather than a branch only relationship with their
Right.
bank.
We've been saying
And
this for
so,
years that the branch network or footprint may be shrinking, but it's not going to go away.
yeah, and so the challenge with digital is that you need to create a consistent experience and a continuity of knowledge of the customer from that, when they do occasionally have to appear in the bank for a major transaction or activity, you want to carry that context, one from that physical interaction through the subsequent digital interactions, and from the preceding digital interactions into the retail, the branch environment. And so part of the sort of foundation of enabling this sort of capability, this personalized experience, is really having a fabric of event-based data about the customer. It's typical in marketing and personalization technologies, to view the customer as an account record.
Mm-hmm.
The customer is, and they have snapshots of who they are over time, rather than, the customer's going through their life. There's a series of events that happen. Some of that is just simply transactions on different accounts. Some of that is major milestones that hit the relationship with the bank, complete new product adoptions, an auto loan event, a home buying event, a change in credit profile and credit interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really stitching that series of journeys together and looking at them as a sequence of customer behavior describing the bank's view of a customer's life, and then having that synthesized view being able to take action on it.
How prepared are banks to, I guess, A, build some of this on their own, and B, partner with a company like Curinos to embrace this direction?
It's interesting. I would say, I think, as 85% of the top 100 banks in North America are Curinos customers. I would say
Wow.
that even across that top 100 banks, there's quite a big disparity in sort of centralization of data flow, and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, and that causes perhaps a perceived lack of readiness among some banks. I think one of the things that helps are some of the major core providers being common.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as you've seen, we have some partnerships with key core providers. FIS we announced recently. Obviously, there's a commonality then in how data is structured and how it flows in those provider systems that can provide like a big, quick step up to get off the ground in terms of that flow of some of that event-based and transactional data. But it can be a challenge for bank clients who really are not today managing a lifecycle marketing program.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start with a modest lifecycle marketing program where you're already engaging customers over digital channels, you're planning waves of campaigns, you're already generating and updating creative, at least on a quarterly basis, we can bring our personalization capabilities and significantly add a multiplier effect to that. About a 100 to 1,000x multiplier effect in the pace of campaigns that can be executed, the rate at which creatives can be informed and updated on their performance, and the rate at which learnings can be derived about where there are opportunities with pockets of clients in their relationship to improve their digital engagement experience, and surface triggers and contextual events to the physical branch channel as well through CRM.
We ran Tearsheet hosted a working group recently in the spring targeting Gen Z. So we had very senior bank executives sitting in a room off the record talking about what it'll take to actually reach Gen Z. And like there was a big question there, but well, they don't make us any money right now, yet they see it existentially that this is the largest generation in history, and eventually that will be their core constituency. And the question is, do we build now or do we sort of wait until these people get older? But I love the fact that you're looking at this lens through like a life cycle marketing spectrum, because I think that's so needed. We have that in other industries, and I feel like in banking, as you mentioned, there are all these events that happen to us that can be stitched together if you see me as a single whole, a single customer.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it spans into it, to your point about Gen Z sort of acquisition. Well, if you view those customers as just an opportunity to acquire a low value account today, and you
Today, right?
don't differentiate or
Yeah.
think about your acquisition as what does it mean? What is the profile of clients and accounts I might acquire today that will have that I would expect to have a quality long-term relationship with me later, right? It's a very different proposition than sort of the volume-based game of how do I acquire as many accounts as possible. We recently launched a partnership with MasterCard and Axiom. We're actually helping them identify high quality um, deposit account audiences, not just audiences who you would expect to switch or open a new account, primary account, but ones for whom you would have an expectation that there would be long-term engagement and high mutual lifetime value.
Hmm. How has, as you mentioned in your career, I mean, you multiple startups, you've been in AI, for decades. How has Gen AI, what we call now Gen AI, that set of technologies changed the game? Because financial service has used some form of AI for decades as well.
Yes, I would say so. When I think about sort of this through the lens of personalization, we really think about, you know, the predecessor point perhaps to 2 years ago as being like a real personalization bottleneck, both in analytics and defining customer audiences, but also in creative and how you synthesize and generate appropriate personalized creative with which customers will resonate. Generative AI has really helped with that second piece of this. It's very common to be, and I already sort of alluded to it, many of the clients we get to, they're in a quarterly cycle of running campaigns. On that quarterly cycle, they plan and develop the creative. In parallel, the analytics team understands and profiles the audience. It helps inform the creative. If you're lucky, you do an A/B test for the first month of that quarter of the planned campaign. You select and analyze the winners, and then you scale the campaign to that audience. Of course, in that quarterly cycle, particularly over the last 2 years in banking, the macro is changing. What your competitors are doing is changing so quickly, and you move on very rapidly to, well, what is the next wave of campaigns? What we've been able to stitch in with the help of generative AI is, okay, well, how can we be continually experimenting live, taking the learnings and drilling down on them, and actually coupling in Amplero, in our personalization technology, we have a reinforcement learning capability that connects with our ability to use generative AI to create messages. So actually, as we're learning about what types of messages, tone of voice, value propositions work for customers in particular contexts in their life cycle, we're actually able to generate new recommended creatives in that flow for the marketing team, not to then have to take to the agency and take some ideas, but hey, here are almost shovel ready creatives. You need to provide the compliance review and auditing, but you can take them live immediately. And we've already learned that we should expect them to be high performing through our ongoing experimentation. So it's
And
a massive unlock. It's 100x unlock in terms of the creative process in particular.
is that also because the learnings that Curinos is getting is not just client specific, but there's some network effects where you're also able to test some ideas?
Yes, there are definitely network effects. And, if you think of there being a common set of use cases in retail banking, there's customer onboarding, there's deepening and engagement and a drive to primacy. There's a push for cross sell. There's a emphasis around deposit augmentation and then deposit retention. Think of those common use cases having a common set of engagement points and a common set of human behaviors that are and decision making that are underlying it. Yes, there's a industry wide. I mean, obviously there's variability in sort of bank tiering and then primary bank channel, particularly direct versus traditional. But yes, there's a lot of commonality and centralized industry learning that accumulates in these systems.
And where are you finding of you said what 80 or so of the top 100 banks in the US are working with you guys already? Where's most of the focus right now? Is it on deposit gathering?
There's been a lot over the last 18 months. There's been a lot of focus on deposit augmentation and deposit retention. If you think about, over the last year in particular, many bank customers being first-time term deposit CD holders, and then that causing bubbles of those CDs coming to term, and you're hoping that they'll roll, and then you're trying to price those deposits properly. That has been a hot use case, but I would say, the key use case really has been about engagement and the path to primacy, and really maximizing quality of customers, simply because over the past 5 years, there's been a significant transition in this relationship between the LTV and acquisition cost of a bank customer. And really the push is to expand the relatively small proportion of high value long-term accounts that you acquire. So it really is about, okay, how do I onboard customers well? How do I really drive engagement with them, and then push them to cross-sell that creates a long-term high value relationship?
Awesome. As we get to the end of our conversation, by the way, this is like the fastest 22 minutes I think we've ever had on the podcast. I feel like
Wow, Zach,
you're a fire
I didn't know
hydrant
that.
of information. I just want to keep drinking.
I'm
Where does
passionate
all
about
this?
the space.
Yeah, and that comes through so clearly. Like, where does all this head? Like, I mean, it feels like you've been ahead of the space as an entrepreneur in your career. Like, where is this headed to? Like, we talk a lot about it on our podcast and in our coverage of the space of, like, personalization for an audience of one, micro personalization. There's a lot of talk, a lot of times, like, that you don't see that, you don't feel that. Like, where is this all headed in the industry?
There are a few things, and I knew you would ask this question, and so I got to sort of sleep on
You have
it
to
for
whip
the
out
last
your
24 hours.
crystal ball, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of things going on, and there's sort of a little bit competing in terms of what they mean, I think, for the long term. We've talked a lot about personalization, and you mentioned sort of this idea of, personalization to one. I think there's definitely an opportunity for thinking about, across the bank product portfolio, a pricing and a packaging, both of deposit and lending products that can become very personal. I do think that's sort of the natural progression. The other thing that's happening, though, at the same time, is this open banking wave, and the push to open access to and control of your data as a banking consumer, and then how you play that into driving personalization for yourself, and where there's sort of information value exchange. And I think that level, that control, and sort of the open banking thing, it creates lots of opportunity. I'm not clear that it creates for institutions a consolidation of data about customer that really would enable the product personalization, unless it's consumer driven. So that was like the cognitive dissonance I had when I thought about, okay, there are these two parallel streams going on, and where and how will they converge? Not entirely clear to me.
That's really interesting. Well, what would it take to get to that point where you could have individual learnings that could be extracted to apply for future product development?
I think I think if you think about enabling the customer potentially to bring an open data wallet to your bank with you, and permission, and have, transactional permission over sharing that information or not in key events, I think that might be a mechanism to enable it from a product perspective, which would be saying, okay, we see this event happening in our relationship with you. If it relates to you and this product engagement or conversation is relevant, then can you share this open data set with us?
Olly Downs, Chief Technology and AI Officer at Curinos. Thanks for joining us on Tearsheet Live today.
Zach, it's been really fun. Thank you so much.
And this is Zach Miller, Tearsheet's Editor-in-Chief. Great conversation about AI and its impact on personalization. And yeah, there's a lot to think about and a lot to look forward to. Thanks again, Olly.
Thanks, Zach.